Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mariana, but you can call me Mari, and today I will be discussing my least favorite books of last year. Alright, so we are at that time of the year where I have no filter and just talk about the books that I didn't really enjoy. And before I even begin, I just want to make a disclaimer and say that if you like these novels and you enjoy them, I'm really glad, I'm really happy for you. These are my opinions, and of course, my intention is not to insult the author, but just the novel itself or the writing, etc. So as I'm talking about these novels, just remember that. And I know we are all civilized here, we all know how this works, but I just wanted to remind each other of this important fact that we all have different opinions, which is great. And so if you liked any of these books and you disagree with me, please kindly say why in the comments. Let's have a chat and discuss these books. I have divided this video into two, same as I did last year, between my most disappointing reads and my hated books per se, because we have different levels to enjoyment. I don't want to say that every single book in this list is my least favorite. Some of them are just disappointments. Books that I thought I would enjoy and love and didn't. And the last five are books that I actually don't like and that I don't understand necessarily why people enjoy them so much. But yeah, so let's begin with my most disappointing reads of 2022. And in number 5, we have My Sister, the Serial Killer. It started out great. This novel is about a woman who is a serial killer and she has a sister. You weren't expecting that. And some things happen, obviously, since she does kill men, or men that she's involved with, her boyfriends. And the sister has to help her clean it up. And the first murder was supposedly an accident, but then it keeps on happening. So how can you really explain that? And how can you excuse it? And that's kind of the discussion that we have in this book. And unfortunately, it just kind of fell flat for me. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it was just, I felt nothing towards the narrative. The writing style was just not for me, and so that's why it's number 5. Then in number 4, we have Pan by Newt Hampson. And honestly, this novel wasn't that bad, and I actually tabbed it mostly just because of the themes and the different ideas that it proposed. It did talk a little bit about just going against stereotypes and going against societal norms. It had some conflicts between the characters, and it had a lot of nature imagery, which was very interesting and very nice. The reason why it's on this list, it's just because it was a little boring and because it had some animal cruelty that I wasn't expecting, and some weird things happened that I could not explain to you why they happened or why the author decided to include them in the novel. Like, everything was going so well, and then something happens in the middle or like towards the end of the novel that made it so nonsensical and weird, and I was just kind of like left with this feeling of, what did I just read and why? Like, I didn't feel like it had a purpose within the novel, so that's why I didn't really enjoy it as well. This one is about a man who is kind of like a loner and doesn't really go along with societal norms during this time. It was written during the 1800s, I believe, and he's accompanied by his dog, and the best part of this novel is the dog. And yeah, we have like kind of like a love story, but it's a very disturbing love story. And I don't know, I kind of want someone to read it, or if anybody has read it, just please let me know so that we can discuss it, because I have literally nobody to talk about it with. And it's one of those books that I feel like there are some things I could say or anybody could say and it would be different and interesting because perspectives can change depending on who reads it, right? So that's why I would like to hear somebody else's take on the novel. Then number 3 most disappointing book was False Witness by Karen Slaughter. I love Karen Slaughter, and I've liked every single one of her novels, but this one was just meh. I don't even remember what it was about. I remember that it was during the pandemic because they wore masks, and I think it had to do obviously with a murder and some trial that was going wrong, and they had to figure it out. It was pretty brutal, and that is all I can remember. So that's why it's on this list. I can't remember anything about this novel. It was so forgettable, and obviously I wish for a thriller to be very memorable and interesting, but this one just, it wasn't. So yeah, I have nothing to say about it. Then this one may come as a surprise, and I know a lot of people really liked this one, so it was just my own perspective and my own take, but I didn't like Cursed Bunny by Bora Chong, and it is mostly my own fault because I don't really enjoy short story collections unless it's Mariana Enriquez. If it's Mariana Enriquez, I tend to enjoy it. That's how it's been so far. Every single short story collection I've read, I've been left feeling meh, or just kind of like enjoying some of them a lot and then not enjoying some of them. And for this collection, I really enjoyed the one with the head in the toilet and Cursed Bunny, but every single story beyond that, it was just kind of like, you know, it could be there, it could not be there, and I'll be fine. So it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't bad per se. The writing was excellent. It was incredible. I had nothing to say about it, and I have nothing really bad to say about it. It was just not my taste. So that's why it's on this list. Then lastly, number 1, and this one I do have some gripes against because I was expecting to absolutely love it, and I realized that though I do enjoy her novels, Casey McQuiston may not be the author for me, and I am talking about I Kissed Cheryl Wheeler. This was the Summer Splash Readathon buddy read, and so I read it alongside other people, and most people ended up feeling a little meh about it. Like, a lot of people enjoyed it and some people didn't like it, but the overall feeling that I got from it was just, well, you know, it was alright. It was about a girl who goes to a high school where she doesn't really belong, and she is always butting heads with another girl called Cheryl Wheeler until she disappears, and she is left with a puzzle to solve and some hints as to where she could be. So we are following this kind of like treasure hunt to find Cheryl Wheeler, and the resolution just wasn't what I was expecting, and the whole novel kind of took me by surprise, but not in a good way. So yeah, I was a little disappointed by it, but it's not terrible to say the least, unlike the novels that I will talk about now, which are my worst books of 2022. And these books I didn't enjoy. So the other ones were just kind of disappointing. Maybe I was feeling a little meh about them, but these I really don't like. So we will begin with number 5. And this one is also very popular, and it is called Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry because it was so boring. Like, I understand why people might enjoy this novel and why the story is quite interesting, but I feel like if you're going to do a story about dreams, and if it's gonna have so much like lore surrounding the novel, then I think you should explore it further. I don't know, I felt like she was trying to tackle so many different things that in the end it just ended up being boring and not interesting. So I enjoyed the story overall. We follow our main character, who is a dreamer, and he's able to follow other people in his dreams. And there is a war going on, or there was a war. It was more of like an extermination of another race, and we follow the surviving 5 or 4 people from this war, and then the dreamer and them going to the city where this happened and figuring out how it can be solved, or how they can exterminate the remaining victims, which is quite horrible. And as I'm talking about it, it sounds really interesting, but maybe I'm not really explaining it well. And I read it a long time ago. I read it at the beginning of the year of last year, so I don't remember the details, and I know that this novel has much more to offer than what I'm saying right now, but for me it just wasn't my thing and I didn't enjoy it. Then we have Crash by J.G. Ballard. And if you've seen my vlog about this one, I talked about it further and I gave all the details as to why I didn't enjoy it. And I think it's funny because this novel is all about sex and cars. Yes, you heard me right. It is about sexual intercourse with cars as they are crashing. So that's why it's called Crash. It talks a little bit about technological advances, how they can be dangerous to human beings, and how we interact with technology. So it has a lot of very interesting themes, and the writing is pretty crude, but also very straightforward to the point. It's something I had never seen before. I've never read anything like it, and I don't think I'll ever read anything like it again. But unfortunately, it just wasn't for me. I didn't like it. I thought it was gratuitous, and the gore wasn't that interesting either. And it's weird to say that. It's weird to say that, you know, like, gore isn't interesting, but it's just that I enjoy horror and I enjoy disturbing novels, but I thought this was just not my cup of tea. I also don't really like cars in general, and just the idea of like masturbating to a car crash just is not, you know, not something I want to read about. So I didn't really like this for many reasons, but one of them was because of obviously the sexual content was just not for me. So yeah, if it interests you, 1, what is wrong with you? 2, it's okay. We all have our tastes and different likings, but also why? And yeah, so that's Crash by J.G. Ballard. I tried to go out of my comfort zone, and I do read a lot of different novels from different genres, so I don't know if it was just like me not enjoying the book, or if it was just like overall this theme in itself is something that doesn't attract me. But I will continue reading some other disturbing novels just to get an idea of whether it is a genre that I want to keep on exploring. So yeah. Then number 3, we have It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Oh gosh, I avoided talking about this book at all costs because it is a little bit autobiographical, and I don't feel comfortable talking about other people's experiences. But she wrote it as a fiction novel, so if we're going to treat it as fiction, then that's what it should remain as. And as a fiction novel, it's pretty bad. Like, the writing was just not we follow a girl who gets into kind of like an abusive relationship, and we also have some flashbacks to her past and to the first time she ever fell in love when she was 15, 16 with a guy who was 18 and who was homeless. She actually helped him, and then they became friends and helped each other, and so we get those two perspectives. But the flashback perspective is told through letters to Ellen DeGeneres for some reason, because the main character really loves Ellen. That aged like milk. Like, it was just not something I wanted to read. Just in general, the contents of the novel were not my cup of tea, but also just the general idea of writing letters to Ellen DeGeneres kind of was a little cringy. But also, why does Colleen Hoover always think that by writing abusive relationships but not representing it as such, she's doing us a favor? Like, I understand that this was meant to represent something abusive, and she is explicit about the fact that this is abusive, but there are other types of abusive relationships, and in every single one of her novels she represents a type of relationship that is abusive and is never like explicitly said. So where do we draw the line? Is physical abuse the only type of abuse that Colleen Hoover is able to say that is like a negative thing in her novels? Like, for example, Slammed, which I also read, about a student and a teacher's relationship, that is also abusive, and it's never really explained as such. It's never explored as an abusive relationship or explicitly said. It's actually romanticized, and we're meant to believe that they are like meant for each other and are truly in love, when in reality the power dynamics that you can see in that type of relationship is wrong. It's just completely wrong. And me being a teacher, I read something like that and I'm like, no, like that's not okay. That's not something that you should be writing about as like a real relationship, when it's actually just abusive. So this is not the worst Colleen Hoover book I've read, but I also don't want to read any more Colleen Hoover, and I know that a lot of people really enjoy her novels, so I'm not here to like jump into the Colleen Hoover haters bandwagon, and I don't want to be that person, but I also don't want to keep on reading her novels because I know that I'm not gonna enjoy them. So that's that. And yeah, so the next one should come as no surprise, because my number 2 worst book of 2022 is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. And oof. I made a whole ass video about this, so if you want my in-depth thoughts about this novel and me talking about it for a good 45 minutes, you can go ahead and watch that. I don't really want to go into it. You know why I hate it. We all know why collectively we shouldn't be reading these novels as actual romance, because it's not romance and it shouldn't be romanticized. And I don't want to talk about this novel ever again. Like, that was good enough for me. I already did my part. I read it, and that's all I am willing to do. Sorry. So yeah, that's Punk 57. It's if you want to know, if you really want to know, it's about a girl who has a pen pal named Misha, and they fall in love through letters, but they don't know each other and they've never seen each other because they have promised each other to never search their social medias and never to see what they look like, so they only like each other for their personalities. And one day Misha actually sees Rai, I think was her name, and in person, and realizes it's her. She is the complete opposite of what he thought she would be like, because in her letters she's like this nerdy girl who is just very reserved and shy, and in real life she hangs out with the popular gang and people who are just rude and superficial. So he is kind of left feeling like, oh, I don't know her at all. And the story unfolds from there, and yeah, that's that. My number 1 least favorite book, or worst book of 2022, is The Elephant Tree by R.D. Ronald. This novel was so badly written, it's not even funny. Like, it had actual typos everywhere. And it was supposedly a thriller about a detective that goes underground to look for gangs who sell different types of drugs, and we are following supposedly this detective as he's trying to uncover like very violent crimes that have been going on in this club. But in reality, there was one crime throughout the novel, one murder, which, I mean, pretty big, right? But we don't really learn much about it from the detective's perspective, because we follow one of the drug dealers who's kind of like a smaller drug dealer within this organization, and he is just beginning to get into this world. He has been dealing for a really long time, but in a smaller scale, and now he's being introduced to this gang, and we follow him and we follow his girlfriend, and it's just all really boring. It's badly written, it has no substance, and I honestly didn't even want to finish it. I just finished it because I thought, might as well. I'm already 80% through, I should probably just finish it, but nothing happened. It was not interesting, and the interesting parts were not even that brutal, or because it was just so badly written that I would be reading like a gory scene and it would be the worst descriptions I have ever seen. So it was all just like a downhill spiral. It began kind of like interesting because of the blurb. I thought, you know, this was going to be a very cool detective story, and it ended up being nothing like that, and exactly the opposite of a detective novel, because we don't follow the detective, we follow the drug dealer. So why I felt betrayed by the blurb, because it was nothing like the blurb was making it out to be, and it wasn't that interesting either. And I've already said that a couple of times, so take a shot every time I say it's not interesting. And and yeah, it was just not another shot every time I say it's not my cup of tea. But that is that, and that's the last book that I had to talk about. So those are all the books that I could include within my most disappointing novels of last year and my worst books of last year. And apart from that, those are the novels that I wanted to talk to you about. I don't feel very passionately about any of them because they're just not great. The two that I would say are the ones that I feel most like hatred towards personally are It Ends With Us and Punk 57, because they're both romance novels that are categorized as romance and are not romance. The Elephant Tree is just bad, so that's why I couldn't even like put it anywhere else. It was just meant to be at the very top because it was just such a bad book. But it's different being a bad book and being a novel that is targeted towards young, impressionable teenage girls who will end up reading these things and think, oh, I want someone like that, when in reality it's just horrible. So I don't really enjoy those types of novels, and I may read some of them this year just for the sake of it, because we all like to critically analyze novels, and that's what we're here for. And that's the way I personally read. I'm not saying everybody has to. I'm just saying it's something that we may want to start practicing more. And I will see you soon with another video soon. Please stay hydrated, drink some water, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you watched the whole entire video, thank you so much. If you like these types of videos, please do subscribe and like the video and ring the bell and all the things. And yeah, I will see you soon. Bye bye.